Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the TT Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness-based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. It's the last week of May. We made it. Can you believe it? I know. It has been quite a month. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. And in this series, we have been talking about the things that affect mental health. And because, as I share with you all, this month has been, I think, just a stressful month for people in general. Mental health is something that we focus on as providers every day, every month. So it's nothing unique to us to celebrate mental health awareness. But I do feel like we're in that season where this is graduation, Mother's Day. There have been a lot of just transitions, I think, for people. We talked last month about jobs and changes in the job market. And I know there's a lot of forecasts out there, and people are, I think, concerned to say the least about what's happening, what's coming up next. Memorial Day happened this long weekend as we celebrate and honor those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. So I think it's fitting that mental health awareness falls in May. But as we have been talking about the reasons why we struggle, I think with our mental wellness, we talked you got two episodes in 1 week. I think I dropped one on a Tuesday and one on a Wednesday, or one on a Wednesday, or one on a Monday and one on a Tuesday, I think it was. I skipped that first week and came in that second week. We talked about our struggles addressing our own mental health and just reasons why we have difficulty consistently investing in our mental wellness. That following week, we talked about how we can be just overly accommodating to people and overextend ourselves, and how that is draining for us and affects our mental wellness. Last week, we got into the genetics of mental health. And I tried to be short. I got some feedback like, no, we like it when you unpack things a little bit more. So you're getting a longer episode this week. You blame the people that told me like when I give you more information. So you take that up with them. And I think as I was trying to figure out what am I going to close it out with, there's always my struggle is like, what information do you present? Because I always just feel like there's so much that I can address. But I think I want to close out Mental Health Awareness Month with how our patterns, the things that we're doing, negatively affect our mental health and how it causes us to be trapped in these cycles. So where did that come from? Um, so if you are watching anything in the news right now, it doesn't matter if you are watching the Sean Diddy Combs trial, if you are watching the Secretary of Health roll back recommendations for vaccinations, if you are looking at conversations about stopping attacks on other countries, if you are looking at your favorite reality show, then one thing is absolutely certain, that we all have patterns. The things that we consistently do, that we keep circling back to, are the same mechanisms we use to make decisions, to make choices, the same behaviors we protect, the same things we may hide in order to be able to maintain them and keep them. The same things that we go to when we're looking for comfort, when we are looking for reassurance, even if it's not necessarily healthy, but it's what we know. Um, Patterns probably are underneath everything we do. Sometimes they're patterns we're aware of, sometimes they're patterns we're not aware of, but I guarantee you, you have them. And most of the time, because it's easier for us to see things in other people than it is for us to see things in ourselves. It may take us a while to realize, like, oh, that's a pattern. I have a pattern of how I respond to stress. I have a pattern in how I respond to feeling rejected or my feelings being hurt. I have a pattern of responding when I feel like people are taking advantage of me. I have a pattern when I'm overwhelmed. I have a pattern when I'm underwhelmed and looking for some stimulation. I have a pattern when I'm sad and I'm grieving or I'm hurting. I have a pattern when I'm angry, right? I like a good Disney Pixar movie. And if you've ever watched Inside Out, like it's full of patterns. The emotions all have ways that they deal with things, the ways that they think about things. It shapes them. It shapes how they view the world, and our perception becomes our reality, and that is also what guides our patterns. So let's talk a little bit about it. If I had to um, choose my top top four, top five things, then I would say unhealthy relationship patterns, patterns of self sabotage, unhealed wounds, particularly those that come from our family or past relationships or experiences we've had with people, um, a lack of insight, and difficulty with forgiveness. Those would round out my list. So where does that come from? Why would I pick those five? One, I like the number five. It's one of my favorite numbers. Uh, my birthday has a five in it. The year I was born has a five in it. Fives they've done well by me. I like a good five. So when we talk about patterns in relationships, most of us probably know that we have a type. And your type doesn't necessarily have to be just romantic relationships. Your type um, can be your friendships. Your type can be the type of people who you feel most comfortable around. Your type can even be the type of church that you attend. Your type may be your public service organization that you join. We have things that we like. Similarities tend to attract similarities. Things that we know have given us joy before, we tend to try other things that are similar to that. We tend to do what we know. We like comfort. So whether that is my coworkers or my organization that I picked, or the type of people I feel like I can hang out with and let myself loose with, like those are patterns. Now sometimes our patterns are healthy in relationships, and we choose people who are able to be reciprocal and loving and pour into us and invest in us and hold us accountable and not just tell us what we want to hear, but they tell us the things that are going to allow us to grow. And even when we might be defensive about it at first and it may be challenging for us to hear, we know that they love us and they care about us. And so we're going to take that information, we're going to think about it and process it and come back later and have a conversation and really try to implement it. But then, come on, Saints. But then we can have patterns in relationships that are unhealthy. So some of you pick safe people. They're safe because you're thinking, well, um, they take good care of me. They will always be there for me. They will show up for me. Now, I don't necessarily have a significant attraction to them, and I typically don't invest in them the way they invest in me. But like I know they're going to show up, like they're my safe person, and so if nobody else I can count on, I can count on them. And you're not actually treating them the way that they deserve to be treated because you recognize that they care a lot about you and they'll do whatever it is you want them to do, no matter whatever the cost it is to them, and you're taking advantage of that relationship. And that's your pattern. Your pattern is to get with people who are going to give you the things that you need and you not have to really show up and work that hard for it. You might have an advantage in the relationship. Maybe you're more attractive. Maybe you have access to some things that they don't have access to. But because you have whatever that power differential is that you have in that relationship, some level of knowledge, some position, then you know this person is going to want to be in your space, and they're going to want to take care of you, and they're going to want to do whatever you need. And then you're exploiting that, and that's your pattern. Some of us don't actually know how to be in relationships with people. Sometimes our pattern is we're fearful and we're afraid. And so we put these protective boundaries and mechanisms around us. Sometimes it's that we push people away when they get too close, or we'll keep them just at bay. We never fully allow ourselves to invest in or connect to people because we don't want to be hurt. And even though we're hurting ourselves in doing that, by not fully allowing ourselves to love and to receive love, it is that place of comfort and safety that we're operating out of. And so we don't we don't push ourselves to move past the hurt in order for us to be able to get to the healing. Some of us have patterns in relationships where we will accept whoever pays us attention. We know it might be for a season. We know they might be coming to just take advantage of us in that first example that I gave you, but it is that I don't want to be by myself. I don't want to be lonely. I want to have somebody, even if I have a piece of them. And so we have patterns where we've engaged in relationships with people who haven't fully been available. We haven't asked questions about the dynamic of the relationship because we don't really want to know, because then we'd have to actually attend to it. We're in relationships with people that might be abusive to us. Our self esteem, it may not be great. And so we accept it because we think that's all we deserve, or we accept it because we think that's all we can have. We don't allow ourselves to really fully be able to seek and to accept and to wait for and to receive what we deserve. So we accept whatever's present. And that's our pattern, is that we get in these relationships of convenience, or these filler relationships. Some of us do not like being by ourselves at all, and so we've just jumped from relationship to relationship. It didn't matter what kind of relationship it was. Sometimes we are in relationships where we're the doer. We're at work with our coworkers or in our organizations, and we're doing everything. We're taking on everything. We want to be the person that's the fixer for people. We want to be the person that somebody says, "Oh, you're dependable. We can count on you. You're the person that I can come to for wise counsel." And we get some benefit from that because it makes us feel as if we're important and we're valued. And oftentimes we're dealing with a wound of not being enough. And so, because we're in spaces where people make us feel like we're not enough, we do everything we can in other spaces to try to compensate for that. It might be in your church. It might be even in how you show up and help other people. The people that say, "Hey, I need some gas. Fill up my tank." You're filling up tanks, and you're taking food to families, and you're giving toys to people. You're paying light bills. You are um, feeling like you're doing this community service to people, but really it's because you have a void within you that you're trying to fill. It'll never be enough for you to fill that void, but the temporary joy of feeling as if you're valued and you're important and you're needed is enough to sustain you to where you maintain that pattern, and you don't really think about why. No, I'm just a generous person. And that is true. There are some people that are altruistic, loving, kind, thoughtful, giving people. But I guarantee you there are equally as many, if not more, people who have a wound that they're covering up with some of these behaviors. Now, you may say, Tarver, well, is that so bad? Potentially, because sometimes it's what allows us to be trapped in relationships of our own doing, of our own creation, of our own making, that cause us to sacrifice ourselves in order to serve others. And I know a lot of you who are believers feel like, well, isn't that what we're supposed to do? Um, the body is meant to preserve itself. Not doesn't have to harm other people to do it necessarily, but it also is not meant for us to harm ourselves in order to help other people. Now, some of us also have a hard time being able to accept who we are, to see who we are. Some of y'all struggle with some very destructive patterns in relationships, but you blame other people. You don't take responsibility. It's always someone else. It's hard for you to receive feedback. You see it as criticism. Sometimes we are very sensitive, hypersensitive, if you will, to any kind of feedback. We perceive things to be rejection. And so we're very sensitive to being rejected by people. We're looking for signs that people are trying to slight us in some kind of way, and we're not taking responsibility at all for some of our behaviors that may be contributing to that. And so your pattern is that you continue to engage in behaviors because you don't have a realization of who you are and how you show up in relationships. Um, I will say the second one, I shouldn't say these like they're in some hierarchical order because that's not necessarily the case. It's not that one is greater than or less than the other. But so I'll say the next one. It just happens to be the second one I'm discussing, not that it's ranked. Is self sabotage. Now, I've talked a lot about self sabotage and where it comes from. Oftentimes, it's coming from a place of fear. And as we talk about our mental wellness or our mental illness on the other end of that spectrum, when you don't show up for yourself, when you are not engaging in things that give you meaning and purpose, when you are not um, doing things that allow you to be able to build on your creativity, nurture your wellness, allow you to be able to share your gifts, then it is self sabotage behavior. And some of you are self sabotaging in ways that you just don't even allow yourself to dream. Some of you are sabotaging in ways that you don't follow through. I give the example all the time of this book that I've been writing for years. I've taken, workshops. I've done all of this stuff. Like, girl, why you haven't finished this book? And I say every time it's because I don't make space for it. I don't make time for it. There's always something that gets prioritized ahead of it. And so, um, before I turn 50, I'll be 50 October the 15th. So before I turn 50, and I say things to make them live, but also for that accountability. I'm taking a week off in July to finish that book, because that's the gift I want to give to myself for 50. Girl, you've been alive for half a century. Finish your book. And I think, right, so if I just look at myself as an example, why do you sabotage yourself? On some level, there is that fear of like, I mean, you're gonna write it, but what's gonna happen with it? Who's gonna buy it? And I have to constantly remind myself, like, if you sell one book, it doesn't matter because you wrote the book because you have the potential to be able to share information. Same reason I do this podcast. I don't have 10,000 followers. Might have 10, but I do it because it's an important part of the wellness journey for me. And that's what I've been gifted to do. So I can't walk in my purpose if I'm not actually doing purposeful walking. And so sometimes we are engaging in comparison behaviors and we're saying it's not going to be insert whoever your comparison person is, which can be very damaging to us in terms of moving forward. Because why are you going to move forward if you're already talking yourself out of why you should, right? Like you've already told yourself the outcome without giving yourself an opportunity to experience it, to have the hope of what is to become, to be able to be fully realized in whatever it is that you're supposed to be. Like sometimes it's about the journey, it's not about the outcome. And I think a lot of us, because we're worried so much about the outcome, especially in this social media generation, um, then we're struggling with being able to even be able to move forward in the things that we really need. I will also say self sabotage can come in the forms of self harm behaviors, right? Like us overeating. We know we're eating to the point of making ourselves sick or causing ourselves health problems. A lot of people pre diabetic right now out here eating things that are going to cause them to become a type 2 diabetic. We are, when we get hurt, as I talked about those unhealthy relationship patterns, when we get hurt, what do? We go to food, we go to sometimes reckless sexual behaviors, we'll go to substances to try to be able to numb, to try to be able to escape, and it doesn't really allow for us to actually find coping mechanisms that truly work. I think a lot of times too, we have unrealistic expectations about what it means to truly be in the space of living as an adult. We have, I think, these beliefs that there are going to be all of these grand moments. And so we're looking for these really big things. I was talking about this today in therapy. Um, when life is really a lot of simple things. And so learning how to be able to accept the small joys, to see the joys in the small things, can stop you from um, having unrealistic expectations of life and being so disappointed when you're not out here, you're looking on social media and seeing everybody cruising and vacationing and doing all of these stuff, and you thinking you're not living. People getting these big houses or getting married or getting these great jobs and promotions, and you're like, what is going on with me? But you're seeing snippets of people's lives, and oftentimes they're very much orchestrated and crafted and constructed pieces of people's lives. So don't confuse that with everyday. But also, your journey and someone else's journey is not to be compared. Your journey is your journey. You need to figure out what that looks like for you. And I think the self sabotage piece is that we never take that look. I think that we can engage in very unhealthy financial behaviors. You know, that cycle of running up the debt, pay it down, run it up, pay it down, run it up, pay it down. The bankruptcies and the taking out the loans to be able to consolidate and pay off. And we've done that so many times in our journeys. My pastor said you cannot borrow your way out of debt, like, because if unless you learn the healthy mechanisms to be able to balance a budget, to have a budget, to stay within your means, under your means, to be able to create savings, to be able to invest in things that are going to allow your money to be able to move further, to be able to say no to short-term things, in order for you to be able to have long-term investments. Like, that's really what needs to be addressed. And I know a lot of us, we did not get that foundation, and so we're figuring it out. But some of us been figuring it out for 30 years, and even when we learn information, we don't apply it. And it's like we're constantly starting over, learning the same lessons over and over again. And I think that's why it affects our mental wellness so much, is because, and it speaks back to that pattern of, like, I'm literally setting myself up to fail. I'm sabotaging myself every time I get ahead. And not that that doesn't mean life doesn't happen, but also, how many times am I going to prepare for the life that I know is going to happen? We know these unexpected expenses are going to happen. We know that at some point they become expected because you know the shelf life of things and how long they last. And so being able to prepare, but also when I had a little extra breathing room, I splurged and I didn't take advantage of the lessons. And so had I kept the same lessons even in the times of having plenty, then when I had less than, I would have still been able to be fine. And I think, us not having the greatest boundaries, um, probably that should have really been my fifth. Um, Us not having boundaries is part of that struggle. To be able to tell ourselves no, to be able to tell other people no, to be able to be resolute in um, not allowing yourself to have access to things that harm you, but also not allowing other people who are going to harm you to have access to you. And I understand that sometimes we confuse boundaries with over controlling things, or even sometimes with people having control over us, like, oh, I'll let somebody else set the boundary so I'll have it, or I'll let somebody else keep me accountable and set up the expectation and the standard so I don't have to. I just have to kind of work within these. And I don't necessarily think that that is the answer either. I know sometimes we choose people to be in relationships with because they are better in areas where we struggle, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to learn the skill, because if we're dependent on someone else to be able to manage for us, then what happens when that person is not available? And I see oftentimes when two people get together, one is a really good steward of finances and the other one isn't. It can be really frustrating to constantly be bailing this person out who's making the same kind of decisions, those same patterns of behavior over and over again. And I've seen so many people sacrifice to try to provide for, to keep folks out of, the debt, to always to be working hard, so to always have money to be able to fix an issue. It drains your partner. It's exhausting for them. And again, it doesn't allow you to ever learn the skill. We talk a lot about the parable of teaching a person to fish versus catching the fish for them. Because if you teach them how to fish, then they're able to sustain themselves. Otherwise, they're always dependent on you. And I think that cycles back to some of our relationship patterns, is that we have become so dependent on other people to show up in our lives in ways that we won't show up for ourselves. So then I will say unhealed wounds probably feeds right into that, because we are still carrying the patterns of our parents. We're still carrying the patterns of people who influenced us in our lives. It might have been a teacher, it might have been an employer, it might have been another adult, it could have been a person you really looked up to, it could have been a coach who put you in a box, who told you who you were, and you're still operating out of that identity. Some of us fall right back into that family of origin pattern, that middle child, that youngest child, the goofy, silly child, the black sheep. And so, as we go back into systems with people who knew us when we were in those spaces, we fall back into those patterns. Some of you will have friends who, every time you're around them, they literally put you in spaces to cause you to walk backwards in your growth. To be with them means you have to sacrifice who you are, to lose yourself to be with them, to be able to be engaging in things that they enjoy, for them to say, oh yeah, that's my boy, that's my girl, because you were doing things at a time that benefited them and fit with who they are and probably still are. You're 10 years, 20 years removed, you're not that, no longer that person, but every time you get back in a space with them, you revert back to that person. And that's part of those patterns too, of that there are certain things with us that become automatic. We've done them so much, we've practiced them so much, we've rehearsed them so much, that we instantly will go to them. You don't even have to think about it, and you'll find yourself there back in the pattern. That's what happens sometimes with exes, right? You slide right back into that thing, and you're like, now how did I end up back in this relationship with this person, even though we're completely different, or I'm different and they're not, or they're different and I'm the same, whatever the case may be. But nothing has changed with regard to how we're operating. But we find ourselves right back here, and we know how it's going to end the same way that it ends every other time. And that's the same thing that happens for some of us in our families. We go back into these families expecting them to be different people than they are, and they're not. But we fear that if we set a boundary with them, if we don't do what they want, if we hold them accountable to the wounds that they've given us, then that means that they will discard us. We won't be a part of the family anymore. And this blind belief system of family over everything, no matter what people do to you, they could still have access to you. That was a long time ago. People change. I think is one of the ways that we perpetuate and keep that cycle of trauma going in our families, because we don't like dealing with difficult things, and we don't want to have to address this uncomfortable person who every time they come around gives you that feeling where you're uncomfortable and creepy, your stomach hurts, your shoulders get tight. Like, why do you have to sit across the table from someone who abused you, who hurt you, who stole from you, um, who took advantage of you, who took things from you that you won't ever get back, and are still causing you pain and reoccurring long-term side effects from, right? But we haven't been taught that it's okay for us to do that, because sometimes our family members will even tell us, well, you just need to get over it. And so we don't want to rock the boat, and we don't want them to say, hey, I'm going to choose them over you. And so we just go with the flow, right? And we're trapped. That's this whole episode. Is like these patterns, they keep us trapped, they keep us in spaces of shame, they keep us in places of continuing to re-injure ourselves. It stops us from wanting to take steps, from pursuing dreams, from embracing passions. um, it allows us to be in the spaces that other people benefit from and that make them comfortable, because they're not having to be responsible for or held accountable. to how they've shown up and what they've done. And that leads me to lack of insight. Um, and I will say that oftentimes we really aren't aware of what we're doing. But even beyond that, if we are aware of what we're doing, we don't know what to do in order to fix it, or what would I do instead? What would be the other option? And so when I talk about that lack of insight, it is not just about realizing the patterns. It could be about blaming other people, not taking responsibility, um, and us liking to not deal with our stuff but focus on somebody else's stuff. So you know how you'll hyper focus on something that's not even important or relevant and small and trivial. And this is how sometimes we can attack the people we love and care about, because in us not dealing with our stuff, we end up alienating or isolating or criticizing, or pushing away somebody that we do care about, because we haven't addressed this. Um, when I think about the what's next, right? So, how do we stop feeling trapped? How do we get out of these patterns? How do we move forward in ways that are going to allow us to be successful? Um, there's a not anything probably new that I haven't told you this month or in other episodes, but they work if we will allow them to. One is, first you got to recognize what your patterns are. Um, in order for you to be able to do something different, you have to know what you're doing that's not working. And sometimes when we talk about taking that self inventory, you'll hear me say take stock, um, reflect. Then, if you're not allowing yourself to do that, then you never are going to get to the why, to the what, to the how. And part of why I think sometimes our efforts to make changes don't work is because we don't fully tease out all of those dynamics. I need to know what triggers me. I need to know why I have the automatic pattern of going to this place, doing this thing that doesn't help me, doesn't benefit me, actually makes me worse. And then why, when I do see that, I still keep doing it. Because every behavior serves a purpose. There's always a why underneath. And so, what am I protecting myself from, or what do I think I'm protecting myself from? Um, that allows me to maintain this pattern. Am I not slowing down enough to stop it? Do I have too much access? Do I not have enough barriers in place to be able to be intentional? And so that I'm not being reactive, but I'm being reflective and I'm being responsive, which allows me to be more responsible. I will also say that as you're looking at patterns, it's really important for you to look at the benefits and costs. Every behavior also has that. So any choice that you make is going to have a benefit and it's going to have a cost. Now, sometimes what we perceive to be benefits are not actually benefits, but what they might be is a little high in endorphin, and so we're getting a bit of a kick, we're getting a little rush, a little dopamine, and so it's allowing us to feel something. It might be that the feeling I'm feeling. It might be because I was numb, and so I get to feel. But it also might be that I get a perceived sense of pleasure, even if it's temporary. And so that might be what I'm chasing. I might be chasing the little high of feeling some joy, even if it's temporary. Um, but then I have to think about it. What cost does that come with? And are there other ways that I can receive some of those benefits without having such significant costs, right? And that's when we start looking at replacement behaviors. Replacement behaviors aren't, you know, how when you're trying to make healthy changes and you got your regular hamburger, you got your turkey burger, you might have a salmon burger, and you might have black bean burger. They're not going to taste the same. And so it is not realistic to think that beef burger is going to take like that turkey burger is going to taste like that salmon burger is going to taste like that black bean burger. And so I think sometimes, and this is why people who have addiction struggle as well, because the replacement is not going to give you the same level of high. But what ends up happening over time is you don't need to get that high in order for you to be able to get by, to function, to move, to progress. When you are not dealing with yourself and you're in a sunken place, then you need a significant high like that to get you to feel. once you get your system back to regular levels, you won't need such highs. And you also won't have such lows, right? Like you tend to find that middle ground and you'll see those waves get a little better. Here's your plug for therapy. You may need some treatment in order for you to be able to get those to be, more even and not have such extremes to them. Because it may be that you need medication. It may be that you need a combination of medication and therapy. It might be that you need medication temporarily while you're being able to get the systems back regulated, and then you can switch over to where the therapy is your maintenance. It may be that once you get into therapy and you start looking at some patterns, you realize, like, oh, I can actually eliminate the stress by making some changes. You may not need medication, but you need to, and that speaks to the team I've talked to you all about. That team might include a therapist, it might include a psychiatrist, might include a financial planner, it might include a coach, it might include um, a spiritual leader. It might include an accountability partner, right? Because as we're looking at patterns, we realize that they extend in a lot of areas. They're social and they're emotional and they're psychological and they're financial and their career. And a lot of times, because we're only addressing one realm and not multiple realms, then we don't actually fully address all of the issues. And so I'm still going to get triggered. And we don't tend to generalize really well. So if I don't have a plan for all of those areas, I'm not necessarily going to generalize over. To these skills that I've learned. So sometimes I need to learn specific skills for the specific areas. That's why it's important for you to take stock and understand what your patterns are so you can make sure that you have a plan to address all of those patterns and all of those potential triggers. Um, I will also say for you that a wellness plan has to evolve and it has to grow. And I think a lot of times why we stay stuck in patterns is because when we realize something isn't working, or there is a new temptation, or there is a new stressor, or there is a new trigger, or there is a new situation, a new person, a new um, way of looking at things, right? Somebody is introducing new information to you that you didn't have before. And sometimes as you open up and really look at what's motivating your behavior, like you are not prepared necessarily to know what is going to come out of that. And so sometimes it is completely overwhelming. And then, like, I realize I don't even know how to emotionally regulate or even fully understand how to navigate when, like, I get stripped down. We talk about being able to be naked, being able to be transparent, um, being able to be real and authentic. But honestly, a lot of us are not ready for it because we have been faking it so long. We have been covering so long. We've been hiding so long. We've been numbing so long. We've been avoiding so long that when we actually do strip down and allow what is raw underneath, like we don't know what, like, that's overwhelming. I don't even know what to do with that. And I think the journey to wellness is not one where, like, one day you just wake up and you're well. I think the journey to wellness is to continue to, one, want to be well, keep that motivation going even in the times where it's hard, because it's going to get hard, friends. It's definitely going to get hard. But I also think that this journey to wellness is about that as areas get to be more in balance, it'll allow you to see better areas that aren't. Um, and you'll feel like you're doing a lot of adjusting and adapting and navigating and cleaning, right? And purging. Purging is hard too. That grief of leaving behind patterns, because often leaving behind patterns means you got to leave behind people. That's a tough one too. And so if we haven't addressed our grieving, like, that might be a whole other issue that you may need to look at. If I could say, um, a thing that I would want to leave you with, because I understand now you're probably questioning a lot of stuff, and this isn't intended for you to question every aspect of your life, but it is intended to question whether or not you're truly well, what wellness looks like for you, and what steps you want to take toward becoming more well. They're often small steps, they're not big steps. And so, if there's one thing I would leave with you, is that you are absolutely capable of doing hard things. You've already done them before. So everything that you need is already in there. It's just a matter of finding the right people to unlock it in ways that you didn't even know were possible. Okay, so happy Mental Health Awareness Month. And this month, along with every other month, I want you to be well.